Ignore him as he is a payroll thief. When I returned from my overseas assignment, there was a new employee named Steve Wilson. He was highly educated and hailed as a promising new hire by the other employees. But he was actually a nasty guy who looked down on others. Steve had a crush on Maria Brown, the female president of our client company named Carcup. And to impress her, he spoke ill of me. Really, how about 3 times your salary then? Maria handed me her business card and scouted me. In fact, she and I got to know each other through a certain event. When Steve heard about it, he was consumed with jealousy and started spreading rumors about me back at the office. My name is Tom Smith, 52 years old. I work for an automotive manufacturer boasting $10 billion in domestic sales. And I had just returned to the headquarters after a year-long assignment at an overseas branch. My long tenure and bilingual skills had earned me the assignment, but many things happened during that time. I remember struggling with training local employees, dealing with research issues, and being busy every day. However, it was an enjoyable year in which I met unexpected people and experienced the growth of our employees. When I returned to the headquarters, there was a young man with a bright smile surrounded by female employees. He was Steve Wilson. I heard he was a top-tier elite who scored first on the written test for the hiring exam. As a promising new hire, he has already gained the trust of those around him and is in charge of a significant project. I thought he had potential too, and I waited for a moment when he was alone to approach him. "Hey Steve, nice to meet you." "Well." Steve looked at me and tilted his head. Since I had just returned to the country and was meeting him for the first time today, it was natural he didn't know me. "I'm Tom Smith. I just got back to the headquarters today, looking forward to working with you." "Got back, I see." After a moment of realization, he looked at me and smiled. "Anyways, I see that there are people like you here. Nice to meet you." Though his words had a hint of something, I decided to get back to work after the initial greeting. Sometime later, I glanced at Steve's desk and was surprised to see him playing a game on his phone while his computer was on. He occasionally looked up to pretend to work while enjoying the game without getting caught. I had assumed, hearing he was an elite, that he would be serious and diligent about his work. I waited until Steve left his seat, grabbed my cell phone, and followed him. I thought I should at least say something to him. I called out to Steve and immediately said, "You were hiding and playing games. Slacking off isn't good." I worried I might have been too harsh, but instead of showing remorse, Steve snorted. "I don't need to be told that by a boomerang employee." "What?" I was taken aback by his sudden change in attitude as he shoved his hands into his pockets. "Tom, you were sent to the branch office and then brought back to the headquarters, right? What's with that attitude towards someone older than you? When a failure of a man of ability tries to be a great man, it makes you look miserable." It seemed Steve misunderstood that I had been demoted and then returned. Learning about Steve's true colors, including his slacking and rude remarks, was quite a shock. The elite newcomer that everyone was looking up to turned out to be this guy. "You're the ones who had expectations. If I hang around with idiot seniors and incompetent bosses, I'll become an idiot too." Steve's bad-mouthing not just me, but the other employees really got on my nerves. He's usually all smiles, but he's actually a condescending jerk who looks down on everyone around him. Well, it's easier to get ahead if everyone around is incompetent. If the newbie gets promoted first, it would be humiliating for you, Tom. Steve smirked like a devil, taunting me. I tried to stay calm and not rise to his provocation, but inside, I was boiling with anger. "By the way, I'm visiting a client this afternoon, Tom. Why don't you come along?" "What? Why should I?" I was about to refuse because I had work to do, but then I heard the name of the client and reconsidered. Even an incompetent can carry bags. See you later. It annoyed me to follow his orders, but in the afternoon, I decided to tag along. We headed to our client company named CarCut, a major car dealership. It's a family-run business that has been around for 100 years. And the current CEO, Maria Brown, is the daughter of the previous president. Although she's only 30, she's an exceptionally skilled businesswoman, and under her leadership, the company has remained profitable. When we met the impressive female president, Steve started fawning over her. "You look as beautiful as ever. I'm absolutely mesmerized." "Thank you, and also you are." As Brown and I made eye contact, I was about to greet her, but Steve rudely interrupted. "He's just a boomerang employee, so you can ignore him." Brown looked surprised by his words, then flashed a dazzling smile and said, "Really? How about 3 times the salary then?" "What?" Ignoring the stunned Steve, Brown handed me her business card. "It's a pleasure to see you again, Tom." As I took the card, she held my hand, making my heart skip a beat. "The pleasure is all mine. We're more than just acquaintances." I blushed at her smile and scratched my head nervously. "If you join our company, I promise to triple your salary. How does that sound?" "My current take-home pay is about $4,000. Tripling that would exceed $10,000. Moreover, only truly exceptional people can get into a major company like CarCut. If the president herself is scouting me, that means I'm a chosen one." "I understand this is sudden and might be confusing, but please consider it." "Yes, I just need some time to think about it." Although I was excited by the tripled salary, I wasn't ready to quit my job immediately. I had no issues with my current workplace or my colleagues, but there wasn't much chance of a significant promotion or pay raise. In that case, changing my environment and moving to a new company didn't seem like a bad idea. Then, Steve, who had been watching my interaction with Brown, spoke up, looking very displeased. "Hey, can I have a word?" "Sorry, I forgot about you, Steve." In my joy at reconnecting with Brown, I had neglected him. I apologized lightly, and Steve scowled. "You've been awfully familiar. What's the relationship between you and the president, Tom?" Seeing Brown and me talking so friendly probably made him jealous. He glared at me with a hostile look, fully viewing me as an enemy. "Tom is an employee who was demoted and then brought back. Recruiting someone like him is a waste." "Tom, demoted? That's impossible." To clear up Steve's misunderstanding, I explained where I had been. I was assigned overseas for a year and worked as the factory manager. Overseas assignment? I went to a factory at our overseas branch, where I was responsible for training local employees and inspecting competitor facilities. During this time, I met Brown, who was traveling abroad. Her car broke down during a drive. There were no houses or gas stations around, and she was stranded on the roadside. My car happened to pass by at that time. On my way to the factory, I saw a woman alone and stopped to help. Not realizing she was Brown from our client company, I asked her what was wrong. When she told me her car had broken down, I checked and found it couldn't be fixed without replacing some parts. So, I called the factory and arranged for a tow truck to pick up her car. Then, I gave her a ride to the factory. I am truly grateful for your help that day and for providing a replacement car during the repairs. No problem. We couldn't leave you stranded and ruin your enjoyable trip. Since the car repair would take a whole day, I offered Brown a supercar from our company as a replacement. At that time, she repeatedly insisted on purchasing it and tried to pay with her credit card, but I refused. Helping someone in need is natural, and I just wanted her to experience the ride of the supercar. I might get in trouble if the company found out I gave away a luxury car for free, but I didn't care. After the repair was done, I promised to deliver the car to her vacation home and parted ways with Brown. I realized she was the president of CarCut only after seeing the address and name she gave me. I apologize for not recognizing you sooner. I would have treated you more appropriately. When I greeted, she laughed it off. Not at all. I'm still enjoying the car you repaired and the supercar you gave me. As we reminisced, I found myself enjoying a pleasant conversation with her. When I looked at Steve, his face was bright red with jealousy and envy. Sorry, Steve. That's how I met Miss Brown. I'm glad we could meet again. It must be fate. When she smiled mischievously, Steve was so flustered that he banged his foot against the corner of the desk, writhing in pain. Calm down a bit. You're making a scene. Seeing the usually pretentious Steve losing his composure made me laugh. I'm sorry. I was so happy to see Tom that I got sidetracked, she said, straightening up. Today, we have a meeting scheduled. Tom is in charge and Steve, you accompanied him, right? What? Brown thought I was the person in charge of the deal, and Steve was just tagging along. Steve, embarrassed, turned red and corrected her. Excuse me, but no, I'm the one in charge, and Tom is just here to carry the bags. But isn't Tom your senior? She looked back and forth between Steve and me, then suddenly raised her head as if realizing something. I see. Tom is here to supervise and see if Steve can handle it on his own. What? While Steve stood there dumbfounded, I burst into laughter. You knew it, and yes, I'm just here in a supervisory role. Steve had brought me along as if I were his subordinate, but Brown mistakenly thought I was there to oversee him. Steve, who was supposed to impress her with his smart and cool demeanor, ended up being looked at with a warm, patronizing gaze, which must have shattered his pride. Moreover, Steve probably knows that Brown's liking for me is much higher than mine, and his jealousy must be uncontrollable. Seeing his face filled with frustration made me feel quite satisfied. I was about to let the revenge go and start the meeting when Steve spoke up. You were considering scouting Tom earlier, but you might want to reconsider. What do you mean by that? Brown reacted to his words. Steve glanced at me and then turned to her. Between a middle-aged man nearing retirement and a talented, promising individual like me, wouldn't it be wiser to recruit me instead? Hey, that's too much. Steve began to push himself as the one who should be scouted instead of me, speaking assertively to the president. I anxiously warned him, taken aback by his boldness. Everyone likes you, and you haven't even been here for a year. Are you planning to quit already? If you're going to scout someone, it makes more sense to choose a top performer like me. With that, he puffed out his chest confidently. Brown remained perfectly calm. As a president, she is unfazed by the suddenness of the situation. I'm sorry to say this, but I don't think Steve would be a good fit for our company. Why? I excelled in both college and the written test. I'm sure I could be of great help to your company. Steve, not satisfied with being turned down, pressed her for an explanation. At that moment, I felt a coldness in Brown's eyes as she looked at him. Our employees are very talented, but not a single one of them boasts about being talented. The more capable they are, the more humble and dedicated they are to their work. Brown was right. A capable person is never satisfied with the status quo and never slackens in his efforts to achieve his goals. If you have time to rest on your abilities, you should be working hard, and that's what a capable person does. Steve, though an elite, only boasted of his skills to impress Brown. She must have seen right through his true nature. Hit with Brown's straightforward words, Steve was visibly shocked. To avoid dragging the conversation on any further, I led him out of the room. I'll handle the rest of the meeting. You should go home and don't slack off and play games from now on. Without responding to my words, he trudged back to our company. I returned to the room where Brown was waiting and apologized to her. "I'm very sorry. Steve wasn't feeling well, so I sent him home early. He's still new, so please take care of him now. Shall we get back to our meeting?" Brown didn't press further and responded with a firm demeanor. We resumed our meeting and successfully outlined the schedule for our deal. The discussion concluded quickly, and we walked together to the company's entrance. "Thank you for coming today. Regarding the matter we discussed, I hope you'll consider it positively." "Understood. I'll contact you as soon as I've made a decision." Not only did Brown remember me, but she also went as far as to scout me. "I'm not sure if I'll accept the offer yet, but I want to show my appreciation." After parting ways with her, I returned to my office. The moment I stepped back into the workplace, I noticed a tense atmosphere. "Is something wrong, everyone?" The employees were gathered in one spot, and as soon as I spoke, they glared at me. Everyone's eyes were on me, and I felt a chill. One of the employees stepped forward with a look of disdain and said, "I never thought Tom was that kind of person." His words left me deeply confused, and my heart began to race. "What's going on?" Looking closer, I saw Steve at the center of the group, appearing with a sad expression. "It's fine. It's my fault for not being able to help Steve," he said, pretending to cry with tears welling up. Not understanding what was happening, I asked the employees. They explained that Steve had returned to the company earlier, crying in front of everyone and saying I had told him to leave because he was in the way. I wanted to help Tom, but he yelled at me, saying I was useless. The employees were desperately trying to console the crying Steve. He was lying to make me look like the bad guy. Not wanting to be falsely accused, I hurried to explain. "That's not true. Steve was rude to our client, so I sent him back early." But everyone was completely on his side. One after another, they hurled accusations at me. "I misjudged you. Bullying a newbie is the lowest. I'll report this harassment to HR." I kept insisting it was a misunderstanding, but no one listened to me. I never imagined things would escalate to this point. Everyone's accusations pierced my heart deeply. When I looked at Steve, he was smirking while being shielded by the other employees. All this was done to take advantage of everyone's kindness in order to trick me. What a despicable guy, I thought, filled with intense anger. Even my boss showed up and asked me to apologize to Steve. I resisted until the end, but eventually I had to apologize deeply to Steve to calm everyone down. "I'm sorry." Seeing me apologize, Steve gave a triumphant smile. "I'm glad you understand. Don't talk down to me again." At that moment, I resolved to accept Brown's offer. After a long lecture from my boss and writing a reflection letter, I emailed Brown. Within minutes, she called me back, and I answered the phone. "I believe good news would come. I'd like to accept your offer, but I have some unfinished business. Could you please wait a little longer?" "Of course, we'll be waiting for you any time." After ending the call, I planned my next move and submitted my resignation that very day. The resignation was quickly accepted, and a month later, I left the company where I had worked for many years. I announced my departure at this morning's meeting, but no one reacted. In fact, I could feel everyone's eyes on me, telling me to get out of here as soon as possible. "So, you're really leaving? I'll miss you." Steve approached me during the break. "The happiest person about my departure is you, right? Are you satisfied now?" Everyone's so gullible, they actually believed my lies. I'm not just smart and also a great actor. Looking at his face made my anger rise. However, I knew that getting emotional would only worsen my position, so I didn't take his bait. As a piece of advice from a senior, don't slack off. If you do something wrong, it will catch up with you. The words of someone who's leaving have no value. Just disappear right now. After mocking me for a while, Steve left the room. For the remaining month before my resignation, I kept a close watch on Steve's actions. My resignation date coincided with the annual company competition. This competition is a major event where employees from all departments submit designs for new cars. The winning design is turned into a product and sold at dealerships nationwide. It would be the dream and aspiration of those who work for automobile manufacturers to realize a car of their own design. With many competitors and a rigorous selection process, only one person out of hundreds is chosen, making it a highly competitive event. The rewards include prize money, bonuses from sales, and the honor of being remembered in the company's history. As expected, Steve also planned to enter the competition and received enthusiastic support from everyone. I'll do my best to meet everyone's expectations. He acted like a serious and earnest young man, but I wondered if he could actually win the prize. While I was lost in these thoughts, I made eye contact with Steve. "Tom, aren't you entering the competition?" "I'm leaving soon, so there's no point," I replied bluntly, and he smiled slyly, continuing to provoke me. "How many years have you worked here? 30. It's so sad you couldn't get a decent promotion and are now leaving." I got heated and stood up from my seat, thinking, whose fault do you think this is? Immediately, the surrounding employees gathered around Steve, glaring at me. They seemed like his loyal followers. Though we had worked together for years, I had clearly lost their trust long ago. Since deciding to resign, the distance between my colleagues and me grew wider, and they ignored me whenever I tried to talk to them. The cold treatment from trusted colleagues and superiors was so shocking that I once left early in distress. Steve, seeing my isolation, laughed, believing he had taken his revenge. "If you hadn't tried to flirt with Miss Brown, this wouldn't have happened. What a fool." I understand his jealousy, but spreading false rumors to tarnish my reputation because Brown didn't pay attention to him is too much. Feeling irritated at work, I decided to leave the scene, but not before saying one thing to him. "Steve, if you keep pretending to be someone you're not, karma will catch up to you." Though annoyed by my words, he retorted defiantly, "When will that be? Tomorrow? The day after?" Ignoring Steve's provocations, I walked away. "The competition results will be announced the day after tomorrow. Everything will be clear then. If Steve thinks I'll just stay quiet until my last day, he's sorely mistaken. I won't feel satisfied unless I get my revenge. An eye for an eye." Finally, the day of the competition results arrived. The announcement and award ceremony were held in the company's main hall, packed with employees. I stood off to the side, watching to see who would be chosen. First, the design submissions go through a document review, and those who pass present their designs in front of the employees. They explain the target audience, sales potential, design concepts, and then the best ideas are selected on the spot. The competition began with a signal from the moderator. One by one, participants went up on stage, and their designs were displayed on a large screen behind them. Every design was impressive and well-crafted. Out of the 100 participants, only 5 made it through to the presentation stage. Steve was one of those 5. If he won the top prize, he'd become a hero in the department. He was probably waiting backstage for his turn. Presentation styles varied. Some gave passionate speeches. Some made promotional videos to leave a strong impression, and others showcased life-sized models to give a real feel of their design. Finally, it was Steve's turn. He appeared on stage with a confident smile. The screen displayed his design, targeting middle-aged men with a sleek and robust look, focusing on functionality and body strength. The employees were in awe, and their reactions boosted Steve's confidence. He began his presentation boldly, undeterred by nerves. And the judges leaned in, captivated. From everyone's reaction, there was no doubt that Steve was the best candidate. Now, let's dive into how the design was brought to life, documentary style. Steve had also made a documentary video, and he connected his laptop to the projector. As the playing icon appeared on the screen, what was displayed was it was the back view of Steve playing games at his desk. What? The room fell silent, everyone glued to the video. While Steve stood there stunned, the video continued, showing him slacking off and pretending to work. The room gradually filled with whispers, and the judges exchanged bitter looks. What is this? Snapping out of his daze, Steve hurried to stop the video, but it seemed he couldn't due to some malfunction. Damn it! Why won't the video stop? Frustrated and panicking, he started banging on his laptop. Watching this, I couldn't stop laughing. When I decided to resign, I had planned my revenge on Steve. I just wasn't sure how to do it. But when I heard he was entering the competition, I saw my chance. For the past month, I had been watching Steve's behavior, gathering footage of him slacking off. Initially, when I noticed him slacking, I recorded it on my phone, not expecting it to come in handy like this. Before the competition started, I swapped his video with my evidence. The result was on full display for everyone to see. In the video, there is also a comment that Steve makes to the employees, saying that they are all idiots for believing my lies. The employees were in disbelief, immediately shouting at him. This is a mistake. I would never say something so terrible. Steve, panicking, tried to make excuses, but the atmosphere in the room turned hostile. The presentation was no longer the focus, and Steve stood on stage, flustered. But the video wasn't over yet. Next, it showed Steve at his desk, struggling with his design ideas. I can't think of anything good. He then browsed a foreign website and found a design almost identical to his. This is good. I'll use this as a reference. He copied and pasted the design into his presentation, changing only the colors. In other words, Steve's design was not original, but a rip-off of an existing product. Everyone except me gasped in shock at this revelation. When I found out about the copying, I was really shocked, and I even wondered if I should stop Steve. However, I kept it a secret until today to show everyone just how despicable Steve really is. Thanks to that, my revenge was a huge success. The furious employees rushed onto the stage one after another, grabbing Steve. You're a fraud. I can't believe you copied the design. They yelled, but Steve denied the accusations with all his might. But the video kept playing. He tried to stop it, but the employees held him tight, preventing him from moving. I didn't do anything. This is all a lie. He eventually started crying while pleading, but the evidence on the video was clear, and no one believed him. Judge, I really did design this. Please believe me. The judge, who is also our company's president, glared at Steve and shook his head. He recognized immediately that the copied design was from a foreign product and disqualified Steve. With this, Steve not only lost his chance at winning the competition, but also ruined his workplace relationships. No, I was set up. I walked up to the stage and stood before the despairing Steve. Didn't I tell you? Karma will catch up with you someday. Tom. Steve gasped when he saw my face. Everyone, Tom is the one who set me up. Capture him. He shouted, appealing to the employees around us, but no one moved. Why aren't you catching him? Tom exposed my design as a plagiarism and ruined the sacred competition. He repeatedly pleaded his innocence, But since the president confirmed it was a copied one, the employees ignored Steve's words. The moment had come when everyone realized that the promising new recruit was actually a slacker who bad-mouthed others and copying designs. The contempt that had been directed at me now focused on Steve, leaving him isolated and defenseless. Seeing his mask fall off was immensely satisfying. "This is the end for you. By the way, I just came to say goodbye since I've secured a job at CarCut." Steve's eyes widened, and he rushed toward me. "You didn't refuse the offer." "I was considering it, but your actions convinced me to take it. Thanks for giving me the push I needed." I laughed triumphantly, and he gritted his teeth in frustration. "If you're so envious, why don't you apply for a job there too? Although, with the impression you left on Miss Brown, your application is doomed to fail." As I taunted him back for all his provocations, Steve glared at me with anger. But I wasn't scared at all. "It's going to be tough from now on, but do your best with that youthful energy. Goodbye." Just as I was about to leave, Steve called out to me. "Tom, wait. I'll apologize, so please forgive me." Hearing this, I stopped. Despite his resistance, he slowly apologized to me. "I'm very sorry." Finally, I heard an apology from Steve. "Will you forgive me now?" He looked at me with pleading eyes, almost tearful. But seeing my expressionless face, he grew more frightened, thinking I hadn't forgiven him. I also deeply apologized to everyone here for my rude behavior. I promised to change and improve. Realizing his apology wasn't enough, he also apologized to the surrounding employees as well. They continued to glare at him, not ready to forgive so easily. Having achieved my revenge, I felt no attachment to the company anymore. "Steve, you may have liked Miss Brown, but she didn't think anything of you." "What?" When I recounted our visit to CarCut and revealed this harsh truth, Steve turned pale. "And yet you got all excited by yourself. You showed such a pathetic side to Miss Brown that she must have rejected you." Hearing this, Steve seemed deeply shocked. If he hadn't mocked me and had acted sincerely, he might have gained some favor her. But now, it was too late. "From now on, I'll be working hard under Miss Brown, earning 3 times my current salary. Let's both do our best." With these final words, I left the hall. "Wait, take me with you to her company." Steve tried to chase after me, but the employees quickly restrained him. Even as I left the main hall, I could hear his cries, and I walked out with a sense of triumph. Later, Steve, sobbing, was dragged off the stage and taken to a separate room. The competition resumed, and an employee from the sales department won the top prize, bringing the event to a close. Confronted with the incriminating video, Steve admitted his guilt and faced disciplinary action. The disciplinary action was an indefinite transfer overseas. Moreover, instead of going to the office where I was assigned, Steve is going to a subsidiary factory where the climate and sanitary conditions are the worst. There, he would have to work barefoot from morning till night, sorting junk screws amid swarms of insects. Even if he quits, the salary would be so meager that it wouldn't cover the cost of living expenses. Unfamiliar with overseas life, facing language barriers and a terrible work environment, his situation was already a nightmare, but his misfortunes didn't end there. After sending Steve overseas, the company quickly cut ties with the subsidiary, completely severing connections. When he asked for help from senior employees who loved him and his bosses, they all hated him, and he was told that they do not who Steve was at his workplace. Rumor had it that Steve had been a habitual cheater, copying homework since his college days, and was widely disliked. Even if he returned here, no one would remember Steve Wilson. Meanwhile, I successfully transitioned to CarCut, earning 3 times my previous salary as promised. My new colleagues were skilled and sincere, and they welcomed me warmly. Thanks to this, both my work and personal life flourished, and I was enjoying a much more fulfilling life compared to my previous job. Not long after, leveraging the skills I had honed at the factory, I was promoted to the leader of the engineering department. Brown told me, "If sales go well, I'd like you to become the leader of our planned overseas branch." I eagerly accepted. "When I become the leader, could we go for a drive together?" I asked her. It wasn't because of any ulterior motive. I just wanted to show her, who had saved me, some beautiful scenery. She listened to my request and promised with a smile.